Hey, what's up, everybody? Josh Bennett here with College Funding Hero. In this video, we're going to talk about one way to get a lot of money for college, and that is through what is called need-based financial aid. So, need-based financial aid is a type of scholarship. Like I said, it's a really good way to get money for college. So, we're going to dive into exactly what need-based aid is and how to, actually go about getting the money for need-based aid. So, let's, just dive straight in. So, need-based aid is it's financial aid that is based solely on the financial need of the family. So it's not based on anything like merit. So it's not like an academic scholarship or anything like that. It is based solely on the family's ability to afford the college. And every college is going to be a little different in terms of how they determine need and things like that. But we're going to take a look at least like the generalities here. So how is need calculated? So to determine what the family's need is for a school, there's got to be some sort of uniform way to determine what this family can afford. And that is done through two forms that we're going to get into here in a little bit. But ultimately, there's one equation that drives these forms, and that is the family's expected contribution or expected family contribution, also known as EFC. So how this sort of works is you have the cost of the college, so the cost of attendance, then you subtract what the college has determined the family can afford, which next we're going to see how that's calculated, but you have the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution, and that ultimately gives you the financial need for the family. And so that financial need, then that's what you're able to, colleges will take a look at and determine, okay, here's what the family needs. Are we willing to give them scholarships for this need? Yes or no? And then, every college is going to be a little different in terms of how much of that need they meet. Like, for example, like a Harvard or Yale, those are, you meet 100% of need. So if you, for example, if your cost of attendance is $100,000, your expected family contribution is $20,000, you have an $80,000 need. Well, Harvard or Yale would pay full $80,000. Some schools will only pay, say, 70%, where so if you need 80,000, they would cover 70% of that 80,000. Some may, give you that 70% in grants, which is aka money you don't need to pay back. Some will give it to you in the form of student loans, which is money that you need to pay back. So ultimately, you'll have to kind of consider how they're giving you this money, but that expected family contribution, or the cost of attendance minus that expected family contribution, that's ultimately what the college could be willing to give you up to that amount, depending on the school. So how that's calculated is, so there's different factors that go into that calculation, such as students' income, students' assets, parents' income, and parents' assets. So that's kind of some of the factors that are used in determining. And so there's kind of standard calculations. So for example, like parents' assets are calculated at 5.64%. So for example, if the family has $100,000 in savings, the college is going to expect them to pay $5,640 of that towards school each year. If the student has savings, so say the student has $100,000, they're going to expect $20,000. So as you can already see here, there's definitely some planning advantages to having money in the parents' names versus students' names because of these calculations. Same with parent income, depending on how much money the parents make. It could be anywhere from 22% is calculated to 47%. Same with student income, it's up to 50% for the student income. So granted, there's some deductions for like living allowances and taxes and things like that, but this is a general calculation that gives you some ideas of how colleges determine what the expected family contribution really is. So there's different ways. So there's basically two main documents, which we're going to show you here in a second, of how colleges get the information to determine what your family need is. And that's the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and what's called the CSS profile. So the FAFSA is the form done by the federal government. It's free of charge. Actually all schools will take the FAFSA. However, some schools will require the CSS profile in addition. Those CSS profile schools tend to be about 400 of the top private schools in the country. So if you're applying mainly to public schools, you might not have to worry about the CSS profile, but each school will kind of let you know if it requires both one or the other. And how they look at this is somewhat different in terms of what they factor in. So, for example, private schools tend to be a little bit more generous, so they also tend to be a little bit more nosy on the CSS profile. So, like for example, the CSS profile will factor in things such as small businesses, home value, and things like that. Whereas FAFSA will ignore some of those. So the CSS profile is what's called the institutional method. FAFSA is what's called the federal methodology. So, and then you also have the consensus method, which is for Harvard, Yale, and some of the more elite institutions. It's based off the CSS profile. So I know this is kind of going into the weeds for sort of a short look at need-based aid, but wanted to get an idea that there's not really just one way of calculating need. Every college will be a little bit different. So it's one of those things that you definitely want to pay attention to and understand how need-based aid is calculated, because especially colleges can be wrong and they may give you less of an amount than you actually deserve. And by knowing what your expected family contribution should be, then you're able to know if you should be appealing or negotiating with these schools. So make sure you look into what your expected family contribution is, and there's a lot of ways to do that calculation. So there's a lot of what are called EFC calculators out there. So you'll definitely want to understand that, but really it just boils down to knowing that expected family contribution is what drives your ability to get need-based financial aid, because ultimately the difference between your EFC, so you want that EFC realistically as low as humanly possible, because that just boosts your ability to get money from the schools. And then so taking a look at what that those two forms are. So this is the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA, you would basically just come to studentaid.gov, complete the FAFSA form, and then you would just new to the FAFSA process. It's going to walk you through exactly what you need to do. There's a ton of information on the site about filling in the FAFSA. But yeah, you'll just come here, and CSS profile is on, done through College Board. So you just go to cssprofile.collegeboard.org, and then you would apply to the CSS profile through there. So these are the two documents that you'll basically need to fill out. They get automatically submitted to the colleges once you complete them. And then because you add the colleges that you're wanting to send them to on these forms. And then once colleges receive them, they will do their expected family contribution calculations based on the information that you provide. And then from there, they'll send you a letter that says, here's the amount of need-based aid we're willing to give you. And again, if you know what your expected family contribution is supposed to be, then you can go and say, no, hey, you should actually be giving me more need-based financial aid. Here's why. So that gives you an opportunity to sort of negotiate with the schools. But either way, you want to make sure you're filling out these two forms, because that's how you're going to be ultimately qualified for need-based financial aid. But again, need-based financial aid solely based off the financial need of the family. So the better position you can put yourself in to receive need-based aid, the better. And then you can stack on that other types of scholarships, such as just third-party scholarships or merit-based aid as well. But a lot of money comes from these need-based aid calculations. So make sure you're going into this with a plan and making sure you're factoring in these equations for your school and your applications. Just otherwise, you may be missing out on a lot of free money, which no one wants to miss out on free money. So hopefully you found this useful. Drop a line in the comments below if you have any questions. Happy to dive in and answer anything that you have questions on. Otherwise, until next time, cheers.